Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Mansour. So, welcome everyone to our little talk for tonight, product discovery for new market launches, hosted by Product People and also by Taxfix, I guess. I'm Clyde. I'm a senior PM at Product People. Been here for almost a year. Have some experience in startups and been working with a bunch of clients in real estate and retail and some fintech as well. So we'll have more about what we do a little bit later. I guess a little bit more about what we do. So what we do generally is we help companies to discover and deliver great products faster. We do this sort of in two ways. One is through our interim product manager cluster, where we go into clients and through engagements between 3 and 36 months, we do the hands-on work of being a PM at your company. The other thing that we do as Product People is host these events, which for the community, which has now grown to over 6,000 members, which you are all part of. So thanks again for making this an ever-growing and successful part of our vision. You can see that here are some of the B2C clients that we work with. If you're in and around Germany, you'll recognize a bunch of these, but we also have a bunch of B2B clients as well. Just want to introduce our speaker for today, Alberto, who is a VP of product, and he'll be speaking with us about product discovery. So I think actually before we get to that, there is a poll that we wanted to conduct. So please go ahead and answer these two questions. Number one, are you currently working on a new market or country with your team that is entering a new market? And number two, what do you think is the most challenging part of product discovery for entering a new market? And this is a multiple choice question, so please pick one. Keeping product decisions and ideas congruent with the vision, maintaining product market fit, ensuring projects are staffed properly with the right resources, or making sure there's a meaningful commercial potential. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be able to see the poll because I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, no, not yet, because it's still running. We're still getting the data, but glad to see that a lot of people are participating here on Zoom. And for the ones on the other platforms, feel free to submit your answers in the comments or chats of the platforms. I'm going to give a few more moments. I think the majority has answered now. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Clyde.
Okay, and so am I supposed to be able to see the results now somewhere? Because
yes, didn't they pop up on your screen?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, no worries. I can read them myself for this one. So thank you for the 18 out of 22 people that answered. So obviously the hosts and the speakers did not answer. But then, so in answering question number one, are you currently working on a new market or country with your team? So 56%, which is 10 out of 18, said yes, and 8 out of 18, 44% said no. Now, for the second question, what do you think is the most challenging in product discovery for a new market? 61% say that it's keeping product decision and ideas and congruent with the vision. 44% or 8 people said maintaining a product market fit. 28% or 5 people said ensuring projects are staffed properly with the right resources. And again, 44%, so again, 8 people said that it's making sure there is a meaningful commercial potential. On the other platforms, well, okay, people don't seem too chatty today. still don't see much answers, but I think that's a good representation since today the bulk of the attendees is here. So yeah, back to you, Clyde.
And I will now hand over to Alberto. So welcome again. Thanks for being here, and it's all yours. Oops.
Thank you. Let me quickly share my screen. Yeah, first on the questions, very interesting, the answers, because when I actually see the second question, I'm almost like unable to decide because I think all of those things are so difficult to get right, from staffing to vision, and actually like taking care of all of them is pretty much a must. Otherwise, any new market won't work, right? So we just can't fail in any of them. Very briefly about me. So I'm Alberto, I'm VP of Product at Taxfix. Been at the company now for 2 years. My background is a mix between engineering, product management, and actually like recently before joining Taxfix, innovation consulting. So as a product manager, as a product leader, I worked in different industries from ad tech to like consumer marketplaces. And more recently now in a very regulated, like interesting financial kind of like fintech environment through Taxfix. Yeah, so why product discovery? We're talking about this now. Yeah, so for me personally, this has been a journey for the last now 4 years. First working in discovery for like launching new ventures. I was working in innovation lab here in Berlin, and then trying to launch new ventures for like a big German mechanical engineering manufacturer. And then moving to Taxfix, a lot of actually, I wanted to bring a lot of the, let's say, venture building mindset to the company. And it was interesting to come to a product company that you do imagine that you would have nailed everything about like how to get the product to market, how to discover a product. But then in a growing company, actually you're doing a lot of discovery, launching new markets or new countries, or launching new service or product lines. You're trying to expand value proposition to different segments. So I would like to talk with you a little bit about that experience today. Before I go deeper, I would like to give you a quick warning. So discovery is such a big topic, and it goes through so many like different contexts, business context, industry context, life cycle of product context, that it's impossible to really like have a single product discovery approach that just works like out of the box. So today I'll be a little bit focused on the consumer products, context within consumer products. But yeah, every business really might need different approach. This is what we do at Taxfix and what we're trying to get better at. Like we still have a lot to learn on ourselves. So before you go into the actual product discovery, I want to quickly explain to you what Taxfix does, because I'm going to use some examples. So we're pretty much like we help people to estimate and submit their tax return. We had like a strong early success in Germany. We're trying to replicate that success across different countries in Europe. And then we're also trying to launch additional services built on that product. It's quite simple. It's a conversational experience. You answer some questions, you get your refund, tax refund estimated, and then you submit to the authorities through us, and you pay for that. I hope some of you already used our product. We're very much a consumer product company. So this is the situation. You had some early success with your product. Like you are operating in existing market, you're very proud, like, you know, your product is working. And then the question for every product company is, so what you do now what? Like every product company like that has been successful is searching for growth, additional growth. And the challenge is that every growth, like will actually, there's many types of growth, and every growth type will actually have like a leap that you have to take that is normally not a small one. So for example, in our case, we had like strong early success in Germany. A part of growth is offering the same product to the same segment, but then getting more people within those segments. And another like potential growth opportunity for us is actually offering the same product to additional segments, and then you have to adapt that. You can also offer like a new product. So we're offering tax filing. You can also offer, for example, we don't, for example, work with freelancers as an example of like a segment. So for example, to offer a new tax filing to freelancers, we would be just offering the same product to a new segment, but we can also offer additional products to that new segment. And then I think the focus for today is actually when you try to offer the same product or the same concept that you already had like so much success, early success in a given market, you're trying to offer that now to a different country. So in our case, we've been trying to like offer our tax filing like experience to Italian and French taxpayers. And really like taking that leap is like a big deal. We're going to talk today, like it's not like you need to get so many things right to make sure that you do that leap. And of course, like why actually so many product companies are pursuing like an international expansion, because like you're literally like increasing so much the potential monetization of the company in the early stage, that then you can start offering like new products within the countries that you already operate. And more often than not, in most situations, you're running against time to make sure that you get early positioning in these additional countries that you can then monetize later with a product. So today we'll talk a little bit about this expansion here. I hope you can see my mouse pointer into new markets. Let's go deeper into that. So I think the first question before we talk about discovery that for me is so critical: what does it take to win in a new market? Like that has to be clear, because for example, for me, discovery is way more than user research. Discovery is about understanding every aspect of winning, like in existing country. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. So oops, this is a bit. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So there's 4 dimensions that for me you have to absolutely get right, or like you don't have a product, right? So you need to make sure that you have a big enough customer segment, you understand their willingness to pay, you have a lot of clarity on their pain points, and this pain point is something that's aligned to your global strategy. If you find pain points that it's not the right thing, that your company is not able to serve, then that doesn't help. Then you need to be able to distribute. This is like something so underrated in product, like in general in product thinking. Distribution is such a big deal for consumer product companies. For example, for Taxfix, more often than not, when actually launching a new market, or even in our existing like a German market, we actually have to think about the product so it actually works with certain distribution channel. So like when you're thinking about a new market, we're trying to understand for example, which platform should we offer a customer, as an example, desktop or mobile, like, or app first, whatnot. It will depend also on, most likely on like where can you distribute it, like with a like good cost economics. So the right distribution like channel will include the right message, the right distribution strategy, so will include the right message, the right distribution channel, and at the right time. And this has to scale. For a consumer product company, figuring out how to distribute to a few thousand customers won't cut. You need to find like a distribution approach that you can get this to millions of customers. And then of course, economics. If your cost of distribution and your cost of serving customers doesn't match, or like the willingness to pay, then you don't have a business. And lastly, but still very important, operations. So are you able to really operate that product at scale? The whole point is that discovery has to actually, you are discovering these 4 things in parallel. So you're discovering how you also distribute, you're discovering what is like how you can actually drive down cost of acquisition. You're discovering how you can serve it efficiently, or you don't have a product. For us, we define actually like the outcome of actually a good product discovery and like a good like initial market launch. I would first define product market fit in that context means that that country or that product line has a desirable ROI that allows us for like a big market segment, user segment, that then we can actually invest millions to actually grow. When actually we're hitting that stage for a country for us, a new country for us, it means that we had a good discovery process that then yielded with like a good product market fit definition. I want to go into details here, but I just want to help you to explain how we think about countries. For us, countries go through 4 phases. You go from incubation to launch a country to accelerating that country. Then we have maturity. At each stage, a country at Taxfix is expected to hit a certain targets. So it's in discovery also for me depends on the stage of maturity of that market. So as an example, running discovery on a mature product, it's very different than running discovery if you actually have no clue what is the product that you should build for a market. That's the first time you talk about it, which is also different than a market that you're already operating, but you don't have product market fit and you need to pivot. And yeah, so pretty much what we do is we define success criteria at each stage of this market maturities. And in our country international portfolio, we're trying to move, of course, more countries towards more mature stages. Yeah, so now we go a little bit deeper into discovery. The challenge for any new country is that a new country changes completely like the environment that you've been operating on. So like when I look, for example, at our Germany market or Germany, our Germany business, we have like an app first product. But when I look at Italy, we have currently a web first product. And the challenge is that it didn't start like that. It took us years actually, 3 years precisely to actually move Italy towards that approach. And here's the problem, or here's the challenge. Like different countries have very different social norms and values. So like if you try to compare the taxpayer in I don't know, Italy with a taxpayer in Germany, you can't. Like they have different expectations, relationship with the government, relationship with money, and that will change their behavior drastically. They also have different priorities. In some countries, you actually look at, as an example, taxes as a way to save money. In other countries, you look at it as something you have to get done. Otherwise, you can actually get a penalty from the government. It is you can apply this to many other industries, like these changes of behaviors. Industries in different countries are different. So you might have a different competitive structure that might force you to have certain approaches when you're actually launching a new market. Maybe you have already a player that has actually similar offerings, or that has already taken a share of the market. That will probably change also what customers expect for any new product that is launching that market. You have different purchasing powers. You can't compare the purchasing power, for example, of a customer in Europe with a customer in I don't know, Brazil, for example, where I come from. And that will also affect how you think about product, how much you need to drive simplification, cost of serving customers, etc. Every country also has different let's say desirability for different distribution channels. You have different costs that you distribute this product to customers. Every distribution channel has different elasticity, etc. And above all, you also might have different regulations if you're working on a product in space that is regulated. The challenge with these things is that when you actually think about launching a new market or a new country, the first thing that most product companies think about is, okay, so we just need to configure and customize our product to fit this new market. And this is sometimes might work, but more often than not, I don't think it will. And I think when a company tries to do that, you might be surprised of the outcomes, and actually experienced with that at Taxfix as well. But that's of course was how we started, because that's the whole great, right? Build it once and launch in the whole planet, and why wouldn't it work? So yeah, but when you're launching a new country, you have to also, of course, build on where like your success. At least you understand the problem context that you're departing from. You probably build a global technical platform, so you have architecture components, you have interface components. If you build it right with internationalization in mind, you'll be able to leverage those things. You probably build also internal products that allows you to acquire, serve customers very efficiently, and that those things tend to be valuable and valid cross-country. And of course, you also build company competencies that are actually fitting this kind of problem space that you're operating. But like the only thing I wouldn't recommend any product manager to assume is that the consumer experience can be the same, that you can just transpose that to a new country. And then the question then remains, how do you actually define the right customer experience in that new country, despite all the things that you can build up? And because of that, like a hypothesis-driven structured, hypothesis-driven structured product discovery for me is an alternative to define what the new country experience should be. So instead of trying to guess, or instead of trying to just use what you have and configure, like assuming nothing and running structured discovery to get there, it's what I would recommend. But then very important is actually like, how do you actually get there? That's structured discovery, it's amazing, but the question is like how you turn it into a practice form. So I think the main important point of having a hypothesis-driven approach is that it keeps you honest between what you believe and what are facts. And is a very important point, because what you believe is also fine. You can actually go to market based on things that you believe and you didn't validate. Because you can't validate everything. If you look at the dimensions I was explaining that you need to figure out to succeed, if you try to validate every single thing for every country that you're launching, you are always going to miss time to market. You can't do that, it's not possible. So you would need to take assumptions, you need to move forward with a few things. But you can't move forward with the things that you have the highest risk on, and that you might regret completely. And we can discuss examples even with the questions later on. But the approach that I recommend is like, so you have a hypothesis board, which I call hypothesis source of truth, which is everything that you believe that you have to like get right for that country to succeed. And this goes to defining hypotheses about value propositions, to experience elements, to pricing, to like distribution channels, and how does that affect, for example, top funnel product experience design, really listing everything. For every hypothesis, you need to know what the confidence do you have in that hypothesis and what evidence do you have. So I would literally say, okay, I have high confidence that this value proposition will work in this market for this segment, and I have this evidence that came from this analysis. And then it becomes a game. The game is prioritize all these hypotheses, think about the ones that have like the highest risk for market, like for you to win or lose a certain market, and the ones that you have then the lowest confidence. So if you have something that's high risk, I don't know, getting the value proposition wrong, and then you have like super low confidence that the value proposition that maybe you have in place is the right one, then you probably need to start the discovery from that. The best way for me to run discoveries is this concept of research loops, where you understand, like you have, let's say, a hypothesis table with like a few dozen hypotheses, and then you're prioritizing 5-6 hypotheses at a time. You can't validate everything in parallel, it's too overwhelming. And then you're picking from this, I don't know, top 5 and design a research loop that specifically tries to validate like those hypotheses. I think too often people get too bogged down into actually research tactics and focus on like what's the method of running research or how to run research there, and forget about the structured part, the strategic product management piece about what you're trying to figure out, like a whole aspect. Okay, so I'm also getting to like to the end. Often, like you actually have a challenge, which is you're already in market and you don't know where to start. You're starting from you're already starting with something that exists. I have a very clear recommendation. If you're ready, like people totally underestimate how hard to run discovery fast growing businesses. And I know most of you have limited resources. You don't have time, like you have a short time to market. Some of you doesn't have even management support to run discovery. My recommendation is always start by taking the problem space you're in and do an exercise with your team and list all hypotheses. This is just an example I took today from one of the boards that I found from the French team, with a hypothesis with like a status of validation, the confidence that's expected for us to move forward with that, and the kind of research that the team thinks that is necessary to validate that. Then, so start defining that hypothesis. Then you're going to have a long list. And honestly, you're probably already building some of these things and you don't even have validation for it, which is fine. You need to decide which ones you're taking for granted. Just be careful. Don't take hypotheses that can make or break your business for granted and never validate it. And then when you have this, you're already you're already probably delivering at the same time now you're discovering. Then design a research loop that tests the hypothesis that was mentioned with lower confidence and higher risk to business. And then define the tactics that you need in that research loop, to drive the confidence level you need to given the time to market sensitivity. The challenge is always you don't have time. You need to get high confidence in everything. And honestly, you won't get that easily. So from qualitative to quantitative research to like product validation, this is like we're talking here about months or years, depending on the situation that you're building. So you can't really do this perfectly. You need to take risks. So like my message is, and we can go a lot on details like in the questions. I'm curious to see your point of view. The point is, first, it's literally like continuous process. Like define your hypothesis table, like define how you're going to test it, and then run these research loops. Repeat that. Some things you have to believe. In early market discovery, you're never going to get like yes, this is true. You're always going to get like, okay, I have medium high confidence on this. You only get this is true when customers is paying for it. When you know that conversion rate work, customers paying for it, that you probably saw retention of that product after months or years of users, depending on the product that you're talking about. So you need to move with like uncertainty, and that's fine. So believe, accept things that you hear, right? For us, the Taxfix, we made quite a mistake when we actually decided to move forward, for example, in the first year, by thinking that we could transpose the existing product, and we didn't accept that the signals we're getting initially. It took us a long time to say, okay, we actually need to have a different product in a different market. So how we get there, right? And then lastly, I believe that structured discovery actually brings harmony to chaos, but it doesn't guarantee you success. It's more like creating like a peace of mind of like a very chaotic process. But you can't predict success. Like you can do the best discovery ever, but you don't know, because discovery at best in the early stage is outputting like medium confidence. So you only know this much later. So in summary, often company growth will come from international expansion for early stage product companies. A new counters just change a lot of constraints that the product was built on. Then third, you should consider running structured discovery to define how a product should be for a new country or a new service line. yeah, and lastly, you can start from any point. Like you can already be 6 months in that new country, and if you're feeling lost, you don't know where you're doing things. I really recommend you creating this hypothesis board and starting from there and working backwards to validation. Yeah, that's about it. I want to actually quickly, I don't have it visible here, but give me 10 seconds. I want to show you very briefly how like we actually evolved. So in 2019, this was our Italian product, pretty much the same we did with our Germany product. In 2010, we said that's not working. We have tax season, so it's a year like life cycle. So in 2020, we said, hey, let's do this differently. Let's move towards like a more like documents first experience. Let's ask questions to our customers. And we start experiencing a little bit better success there. And then this year, we said distribution is not working on an app. We need to actually move because of the distribution channels that we're using. We need to explore more search engine marketing. We want to have like a desktop first experience. We want to create like a higher touch experience with the customers. And we want to move to like very little questions and more. You upload the documents, we take care of the rest for you. So every year the product has been changed so dramatically that I can't compare anymore like our German product with our Italian product. And I wish that I would go back and actually assume nothing and then really start Italy from zero, and this would probably have saved us at least 1 year in this journey. Yeah, that's about it. Happy to take questions and maybe through that also make it very pragmatically with few examples for you.
Cool, thank you. So let me, can't do that. So I'll have to share again. So, as I said, we'll now take some Q&A, but while you're thinking about your questions, as promised, a little bit more about product people. So here are the different use cases that we usually work in. So you got some funding and you need to grow your team by 1 to 5 PMs. You have a PM going on parental leave for any amount of time. Somebody's leaving your company, and anybody that's tried to hire PMs knows that it takes quite a lot of time. Or you have a temporary initiative that's important and urgent, so you need to bring somebody in quickly. And then lastly, if you want somebody to come in, appraise the product team or processes that you have, that's also something that we do. Here's just a snippet of feedback that we've had from clients, that we're really fast and we're super, great things. And then just a quick snapshot of our team currently. This is about 4 times as big as we were at the beginning of the year, so we've grown pretty quickly. Oops. And we are hiring. So if you are an experienced PM, or maybe somebody who has a little bit of less experience but looking to grow that, or if you are someone who's experienced or know someone who's experienced in looking for PMs and hiring, then we are also looking for support there. So feel free to get in touch. So now I will stop sharing because I have to. Alrighty, so we've got some questions. We've got one practical. Will you share the slides at the end? Or do you mind sharing the slides here, maybe in the chat? Is that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll generate a PDF and send to you here.
Okay, cool. Then we got, so this isn't phrased as a question, but I think you could potentially give your thoughts. Tiago says, sounds like if I use a business canvas model applied to the hypothesis-driven product discovery, this will help a lot. Do you have any thoughts there, Alberto?
Yeah, it's a good question. So business model canvas for me is just a tool. The most important thing is the questions you ask. So like ideally, if you actually, I always tend to say to my team that actually figuring out the right product to build is answering probably 100 questions, right? Like from value proposition segment and like details of distribution, experience, like design details, how you operate, and really getting all of these things right together. The business model comes, I see it as a stimulus for you to think about these things. But honestly, if you actually have a list of 100 questions split by these areas that a product needs to get right, it's as good as the business model canvas. So yeah, I do think it actually is a good, like you can use it as a stimulus to think about the questions, to reveal the hypothesis that you have and then document those. The most important thing is that you have like a well-documented hypothesis list that you actually live with it for like 6 months, a year, 2 years, as long as you need to achieve product market fit. It becomes a living document, something that you are maintaining and discussing and you're using to define what you do next. You're actually going back to that board and say, okay, we agree to this, we validate. And everyone in the team is like, yeah, we validate. Maybe some people will disagree, some people will agree. And then you kind of kick off that conversation. But yeah, the business model canvas could be a signal or let's say like an input for you to think about it. I personally prefer to have just a list of questions, almost a checklist to think about. I think it works.
Thank you. Gabrielle asks, how does Taxfix structure discovery in such a cyclical market as taxes?
That's a very, very, very important question actually for us, because so taxes in most countries would happen either in Q1 or in some countries in Q2. Germany market is a bit different because in Germany you can file your taxes almost the whole year. And even like living after the deadlines, you can still file your taxes in some circumstances. That means that actually for us in this very cyclical market, there's times where we actually triple down on discovery, and there are times that we triple down on actually delivering. So when we actually just finish the season, for us is a time to actually take stock, right? It's like we look at like behavioral data. We actually try to understand which hypothesis we had before going to the season, tax season. What was the outcome, which experience we did, and how did actually we learn what we learned from them. We often taking this time also to start running like some user research, and then we try to compact all of that to really kind of reset hypotheses and things that we want to test next year. And this is actually exactly what we're doing now for both Italian and French markets, because we're off season. And then, of course, in preparation for the tax season, we often would run different kinds of experiments. So you would need to go towards more concept testing, like validation by showing concepts to customers. When you're in season, you can do like more like different kinds of like, tests with end consumers, all the way from, I don't know, like a fake door test to real actually, feature tests or simplified feature tests. So yes, pretty much we plan the whole thing around seasons for every market that we work on. And I think this is also present in many types of businesses. You really need to consider that. So you align like product, let's say you need to align product and like discovery with the business outcome you're expecting by when. Because if you start too late, you actually probably already missed the chance to impact the business direction. Yeah, it's like trying to, I assume, I did never work in e-commerce, but I assume end of years is a big deal for e-commerce. Like if you're trying to start running discovery in November, you're probably too late if you want to like do like things that would majorly impact the end of year season there. It's the same for us with taxes. You're too late if you're doing like discovery in Q1, early January, to launch a market in March, April.
Yeah, makes sense. What's the major difference between running a discovery activity in a new market versus one in which you already exist?
Yeah, it's actually, for me, it's extremely different. So in actually an existing market, depends, existing market, post-product market fit with enough volume, you have a lot more options of how you can actually test product. So when I call discovery, again, includes everything. Like, I think even when you're launching something, you're still doing discovery because you're trying to see if what you define it actually works. And I think in an existing market with enough traction already, you can actually try a lot more to play with fake door tests. You can try to play with how you position messaging of value proposition across the whole product. These things are very hard to do when you're very, very early in the market. And even if you don't have a lot of traffic, right? You won't get, for example, high confidence when you're testing something if you actually are in a market where you can't get statistical confidence, and you need to resort then to lower, let's say, lower confidence tests, even quantitative tests, right? Your survey won't necessarily tell you that is going to be the behavior of the customer that you can test in an existing market. So because of it, what you test, how you can test changes, then you also need to think differently about how you run discovery, because you can try different things. And also for existing market, you have a lot of base that you're building up on. So it's much easier to create very well-defined hypotheses. You're creating variations of what you know and see what works better. You're scaling, you're trying to improve conversion rate. In a new market, you might be trying to improve conversion rate, but maybe your problem is not a conversion, it's not an experience problem, maybe it's a value proposition problem. And understanding that you're actually trying to solve a different problem in an early market, and ensuring that you're actually not in the wrong path. It's actually, for me, almost like life and death decision making for product managers launching new countries.
Cool, thank you. And can you give an example of a larger hypothesis that wasn't validated in practice, and what did you do?
Yeah, love that question. Kylian, would you want to think about that? While I think we have many for different markets. For example, for the French, I would give a French market. Kylian can also give an Italian market example. Often, for us, for example, in the French market, we thought that we could actually help people to increase their tax refund. And we thought that there would be a very significant segment that's willing to pay for us to help them to increase their tax savings. But then we realized that actually people are looking for something else. First, that segment is not willing to pay because you have alternative for free with the government. And we also learned that most people that actually can save a lot or can increase a lot their tax return, they're extremely high income. Or much higher income than the average. And that really also changes what they're looking for product-wise. They're not only looking for tax filing, they're looking for a whole advisory package, including financial advisory. And that really changes a lot how we actually had to think about the French product. And now we're exploring actually we have two ways to think about the market now. Either we should explore more the people that actually want to optimize their taxes, or we can actually explore more people that actually want to avoid making mistakes, not necessarily optimize their tax return. And this we learned actually took us almost 2 years to get to that conclusion and say, okay, this doesn't work, we need to try something differently. That's a hypothesis that was there early days that we had to kill. Maybe Kylian also has some about Italy as he's driving the Italian market.
Sure, I can add something from Italy. So I think, filing a tax return is basically just about transferring a lot of data points over to the government. So basically the natural assumption we had in Italy from day one was that the way to get all of these data points from customers is just to ask them. And so we went live with a pretty lengthy question flow of like 60, 70 questions that customers had to answer about their personal tax filing situation. But I think in the end, we discovered that even though this was working very well in Germany, it created for too complex of a product in Italy. So like looking at the alternative solutions in the market and the rest of the other steps people would have to take in the product, they also had to upload documents. It was too inconvenient of a solution. And so we actually really changed that approach later on, and got the information from people's photos that they were uploading instead of from these questions, and just completely reversed the structure of the basic experience. So yeah, basically, I think we were aware of like this, having the right value proposition about what's a convenient way to do your taxes, but we weren't sure what's the right way to solve it.
Yeah, and just to quickly complement, there is, like you need one small thing to put you on the wrong path. Like it can be like, like a regulation in that country that forces you to do something, and then you think, okay, then we create experience around that. Or it could be like an assumption that you're taking from your country that works, and then you like make that as like your assumption, working assumption moving forward. And this is actually where it goes wrong. And you need to be conscious. You might have to do that. There is no way around this, but you need to be conscious and know that you have that, but you did not validate, and be clear that, as you go through time, that you say, okay, this is not working. We have to rethink this value proposition or this experience approach.
Cool. We've got one from YouTube. What would you recommend doing first? The technical research to see if you uphold all regulations, or the market research itself to see if there's a need for the product?
Definitely market research first. So the way we approach it is, we believe that you can always figure out a way to like overcome like anything if you would actually like understand what the customer needs. And so for us, we only do really like deep feasibility analysis, technical research, like in later phases, when you're doing like running like a initial market discovery. Often we try to understand complexity. We try to understand like like what is the requirements from the government to like send tax returns. And so far, like actually early days, we were very like like we made huge mistakes when we actually decided that the only way to actually be able to like deliver to a certain regulation requirement was to do something in a specific way. But then every time that actually took a more customer-centric perspective and said, this is the customer experience that we need, how can we do that and still be compliant and do that in a compliant manner? This changed everything for us. So for me, always start with market research, understand like if there's a market need, understand for whom in that market, then you're going to see if the kind of like regulations, requirements apply to that segment that you want to serve, maybe for that certain product experience that you want to do. So if you don't know this, you can't even really understand if the regulation apply to that specific situation. So always customer first. Yeah, then you move to feasibility analysis later.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like a good approach. What in general is the time frame / duration you plan initially to run a product discovery phase for something like this? Yeah,
it's a very interesting question. There's no time, so depends. There's depends. If I'm launching, I don't know, if you give me a new market to launch in Europe or whatever, any country on Earth for Taxfix next year, I would actually spend at least 3-4 months trying to understand that market. It's a more exploratory research where I would like to really try to understand, okay, what are the segments in those markets, how people currently do their taxes, what challenges do they face doing that? Do we have a majority of taxpayers having certain problems that we can solve or is it only the rich having certain problems? And then it's not like how we also approach product then at Taxfix. So if it's really open early stage, I need 3 months to kind of create the first hypothesis. But then if you're talking about discovery, about pivoting a product, it can be, you can do a research loop here of like few weeks, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. If you're talking about, for example, testing like a certain, like, you know, a certain hypothesis and an existing product for optimization in mind, so a question such as, what if I change this, would it drive higher conversion rate? And you're trying to like understand through customers before you actually run the experiment, what's the right way to do that, what different solutions you can try. That you can even do like in a week, right? Like you can just talk to people like in the first 2 days, define the concept, and then start testing it later that week. So it's very different discoveries for different stages. They would probably need different time. And that's why you also need management support, most likely, because people tend to confuse it a lot, including on like high level management. What is the goal of research at different places? And when you tell someone like I need to do around 3 months of research, you need to really explain and to get that confidence. Okay, it's fine. It's a new market. Like understanding doing 3 months of research there is actually expected for us to be able to launch a proper product there.
Nice, nice product answer. It depends. I like that. So the question, I've got one question. Will you follow the same or different discovery techniques to validate if it even makes sense to launch in the market?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I was sharing, like we take actually a market early stage, we take a market and we call it incubation phase, really just the first phase where we're actually deciding if we should go to that market or not. We actually at Taxfix already spent in one country like 5 months doing user research, like not only user research, doing discovery, to actually decide that we didn't want to go. Because as soon as we commit to a market, we're going to spend millions on it over years, just in terms of product, let alone marketing. Like it's millions and millions, like trying to like, it's a consumer product, trying to like crack that market. So yeah, on that kind of early stage, your discovery techniques, it will like, yeah, it will be slightly different than on a later stage. So yeah, absolutely. Now the question is like, if there are specific techniques, then how you would apply them? You know, like I can give you an example where you should probably not apply like later stages, you cannot apply on early stage. So usability testing, right? Like if you are doing usability testing, you're probably trying to optimize conversion rate or like experience of a product that you know it works. You're trying to optimize the usability of that product. You can't apply this kind of technique on our early stage market or very early stage product. It's just the wrong thing for that time. Why? Because you're not sure about the value you're creating, why you're actually then trying to do research or discovery on usability. So you always think about like the problem you're trying to solve. So if you're trying to define a value problem or its distribution, you might need to use a different technique for that. Distribution is a great example. Distribution, you actually can experiment with it in very early stage. Like, you know, you can actually see if a certain marketing channel works in a new market without any product. And therefore in distribution, you could actually try like, different like experiments in a very early stage that you can't try on a product experience side. But then distribution also has a lot of seasonality. All this like marketing channels, they will behave differently depending on the time of the year, especially in terms of costs. So there are some things you can't really test. So find the right technique for the right time, for the right problem you're actually facing. And yeah, I always recommend that you go through the hypothesis, define the hypothesis, define what you need to learn to prove that hypothesis, and then say, okay, for learning, I don't know, hypothesis about if the segment is willing to pay, I need to run this type of research. So I probably need to do pricing research, and pricing research will naturally be like very like quantitative based. So if you try to run like discover price purely through like user interviews, you won't get there, right? So that's how I actually would normally do. Start from the hypothesis and define the research technique.
And then I think this may be our last question. So you touched on it already during the last part where the German and the Italian products started to really diverge. What kinds of, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of challenges there. What are you seeing, and does it get to a point where they're sort of become like different products because they're so divergent?
Yeah, they are different products already. So this is very interesting, very, very interesting question. It goes to, because it goes into like organization strategy, company strategy, organization design, and many other things. There's the underlying assumption in most product and tech organizations that you have to, organize organization. So you actually build global products that then you can launch in multiple countries with very little customization and also local operations. And that's okay. Like it might work in many industries or to a certain extent. So like the challenge with that, like often is like, what do you allow in terms of divergence between countries? So as you know, like there's a lot of European business, for example, like tech businesses, especially in Berlin, that grew through a lot of acquisitions in different markets. And then they have a very different product experience, and they're trying to merge into a global product experience for scale of economies reasons. So the other approach is when you actually don't do that, right? Which wouldn't like make sense business wise, but where you would say, okay, we can't like diverge too much. But what purpose does that serve? Like if in a new country you need to deliver a customer experience that you need to achieve product market fit, you have to allow it to diverge. And rather than trying to kind of like, let's say, hinder innovation by creating false limitations for what you need to actually do to serve customers well, you actually have to organize our organization, including building a software architecture in a way that you can actually have that freedom. We try to do a lot of that at Taxfix. So the way we design the teams, so we have country-centric teams, and we also designed the technical platform in a way, knowing that early stage that we wanted to diverge, and we didn't want to create a limitation to say to for example, the Italian product team and say, okay, you can't do this differently than the other market. To actually say, do everything you can to create the right product there, and that will end up with divergence. And later on, you can fix where also there's too much divergence and doesn't need to be. You can fix it. And just last point, there are a few things that you don't want to diverge. So like as an example, we build a lot of underlying internal products to operate like our products to acquire customers. There's a lot of global tooling that we build that allows us to operate at like international scale. And if we add more countries, this would actually become a strategic advantage. And of course, I don't want to create a different tool in every market for us to, like, for example, spend marketing money efficiently. So we have like a team that takes care of marketing tooling. And this team is actually responsible for building a global tooling for that. And then we can leverage this in every country. Same we have for tax operations, and in different areas of our company. So there is part of the organization you need to be smart. I'm talking often about the consumer experience in the end. That's the part that you don't want to, you need to be open and free and let people innovate.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Alberto. I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks, Killian, as well, and for everyone for joining tonight. The video will be up on YouTube in a matter of minutes. So yeah, if you want to, and I think someone also asked for the slides. So maybe we can also, I don't know, throw that in the chat.
Yeah, stay a bit longer. I'm going to send it to you.